Hello everyone! In this video, I'll be showing you how to sew and attach the collars as seen on the front zipping TNG jumpsuits. These collars were seen on many different uniforms across multiple uniform eras. They were made, interfaced, and attached different ways on the different uniform styles. Like I said, in this video we'll be focusing on the front zipping TNG jumpsuits. I'll be doing separate video tutorials for the collars on other uniform styles. Sewing patterns for most of the uniforms I just mentioned are available on my Tailors Gone Wild website, www.tailorsgonewild.com. Patterns for the others are coming as soon as I can get them to you. I'll be demonstrating with my TNG jumpsuit sewing pattern. Custom dyed collar piping is also available on the Tailors Gone Wild website. I color matched it to screen-used costumes and elements, and it works great for both the jumpsuits and the wool jackets. So let's dive in. In this case, the collar is comprised of 3 layers: the collar shell, piece A1, the collar lining, also piece A1, and the division-colored collar piping. Apply a mid-weight or heavyweight fusible interfacing to the underside of your collar. Pin the collar piping into place along the upper edge of the collar. Note that the upper edge of the collar has 3/8" seam allowance, but the piping lip is only 1/4 inch, so the piping will need to be inset a bit so the edge of the cord is exactly along the seam line. Using a zipper/piping foot, sew the piping to the upper edge of the collar with 3/8" seam allowance. Trim away the excess piping length at the front edges and carefully apply some liquid fray preventer. Don't use so much that it seeps up the piping past the lower seam line, because this may discolor the piping slightly. Pin the collar onto the jumpsuit neckline, matching center backs and shoulders, and with the piping cord just outside the center front, so the piping stitch line is 1 inch from the front edge. Baste the collar to the jumpsuit neckline with 3/8" seam allowance. Check to make sure the collar is properly basted, with no pleats, tucks, puckers, etc. If everything is good to go, sew the collar to the jumpsuit, beginning and ending your stitching next to the piping cord, but not stitching through the cord itself. Notch the front yoke allowance at the center front 1 inch from the edge. Clip both the front yoke and collar seam allowances 2 inches from the front edge. Press all seam allowances downward toward the yoke at the center front, then press the rest of the allowances upward into the collar around the rest of the neckline. On the collar lining, press the 3/8" lower neckline allowances upward. Pin the collar lining to the collar along the upper edges, right sides together. Again, using a zipper/piping foot, sew the collar lining to the collar along the upper edge with 3/8" seam allowance. Notch the seam allowances along the front curve, and clip the allowances along the rest of the upper seam. turn the collar lining under and press. Clip the lining's neckline allowance like we did on the jumpsuit, 1 inch from the front edge of the collar, and tack the layers together by hand. Hand sew the lower folded edge of the collar lining to the jumpsuit neckline just inside the machine stitching. Skipping ahead to the end of the construction process, tack the upper front allowances under by hand, taking care to only stitch through the other allowances and fusible interfacing, and not onto the yoke fabric itself. We don't want our stitches to be visible on the outside of the jumpsuit, even though they were sometimes on the screen-used uniforms. There's a free sewing tutorial for the TNG jumpsuits on my blog, www.StarTrekCostumeGuide.com. Like I mentioned earlier, sewing patterns for them are available at www.taylorsgonewild.com, both as physical copies and digital downloads. I've also put together an entire video walkthrough on how to make the TNG jumpsuits, which you can also get on the Taylor's Gone Wild website. I don't know about you, but I'm a monkey see, monkey do kind of learner. The free tutorial on my blog is very thorough, with detailed instructions and dozens of photos, but I definitely learn best when somebody says, sew these two pieces together along this seam, and I get to actually watch them do it, so I know exactly how to do it too. The full walkthrough is over an hour and a half long, and we cover literally every step of the entire process. Sew this, press these seams, line this thing up with this thing, and before you know it, you have a finished uniform. So check that out if you're interested, and I'll catch you in the next video.